YouTube, we got an amazing unboxing today. I got something uber special going back to as late as the 40s, 70s, 80s, early 2000s, a high complication from Patek, and a Daniel Roth Tourbillon that's a piece unique with a hella surprise. Stay tuned. Let's get into, I have so many good things to choose from that I don't know where to start, but I'm gonna take you guys back to the 40s, 50s, and I'm gonna show you what seemingly seems like a no big deal watch that you pick up at a flea market. Zoom in on the dial, what's that saying, Nina?
Something.
Anti-magnetic.
Yes.
Anti-magnetic watches, believe it or not, date back to the late 1800s, where Vacheron started experimenting with different materials in order to reduce the effect that magnetism would have on a watch by making the springs out of different materials. I'm not gonna get into the history of it. They didn't end up making a pocket watch until, so I think it was like 1915 where they made the first anti-magnetic pocket watch. So no, Patek wasn't the first, but one of the first, because the first wristwatch that was anti-magnetic was actually made by Tissot in 1930. So here's a 100,000 plus watch that seemingly looks like no big deal, but it is extremely rare to find these examples. Number one, that were that many made. Number two, for the ones that were made, I'm fairly certain those that had them may have just thrown away because they were very cheap. Speaking of rare but modern, so this guy's name was, I actually had his name up because I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly, 𝗙𝗃𝗄𝗃 censored. So these were artisan pieces done by 𝗙𝗃𝗄𝗃. You'll notice the guy's name is in the back in the engraving, and it says 1 of 29 right here in the corner. It's kind of tough to tell, but that's not what's so special about this watch. If you flip the watch over, because that's what this watch does, it's a reverso. I didn't have it right. Okay, not to kill this, not to spoil the surprise. You'll notice a typical Jaeger dial, right? With your hours going sort of up and down. You've seen this done on a Jaeger before, until, now zoom in on this. I do this, and I twist this little dial, and it reveals the zodiac signs by the artist. This is a hand-painted, I can't talk this morning, I'm telling you. A hand-painted enamel dial representing the zodiac signs. Now, this isn't, this gentleman is not the only one that Jaeger has contracted to create various pieces. They've contracted various artists to create this very watch. Of course, when you reveal the original Jaeger dial, it depicts different scenery, different artists. You guys can look this up. They've done a tremendous job. And this is a very collectible piece. How about an old school Urwerk? These are starting to pick up speed in the back of some of the newer stuff that Urwerk has made, because historically these were always traded at no money. And by no money, I mean like you could pick these up for around 20 grand. Finally, that Urwerk has made it into the limelight alongside with all the other independents out there, because again, we are in an era of independence. We're seeing record numbers from independents that are fetching big money in auctions that people are actually going after. They're becoming harder and harder to find. And it's not just an era or fad. This took 20 years to get here. For guys like MB&F, for guys like Urwerk, for guys like 𝗙𝗃𝗄𝗃𝗃, it took that many years for them to get into the limelight, and now that they're here, they're not going away anytime soon. I tell you guys about sleepers all the time. Look for some of these older model Urwerks, because these guys in the future are, this is the vintage of the, you know, of the world of independence, especially from Urwerk. Let's go backwards again. Let's go 70s. What were you doing in the 70s, Nina?
I was just sitting, not born yet.
Just not even remotely even close.
Not even a thought.
Yeah, not even a thought. See, I was born in 75, so yeah, I remember those wild days. Big hair, big shoes, big pants. Let's talk about, I talked about in the past, plenty of times I talked about rare dials, stone dials, diamond dials. And honestly, on that list, the top 10 list, if you want to talk about vintage Rolexes, it's always going to be the Lapis dial, that blue, beautiful stone that sort of has those gold speckles in it. Definitely Lapis dials, malachite dials, right? Things of that nature. There's so many different dials that Rolex has made out of stone that makes the watch rare, and for two reasons. Number one, first and foremost and most obvious, is the fact that they didn't make many, right? That's number one. But the second reason is survival. Survival of these dials is slim to none. And the reason for that is because, listen, people used to bang their Rolex, used to drop their Rolex. And when you're talking about a stone dial, there's only so much abuse a stone dial can take. Speaking of taking abuse, have you heard of the Stella dial? named after the company that actually made this stuff for Rolex. But Stella produced basically enamel that they provided to Rolex, and then they hand applied it to these dials, right? So green, pink, blue, red, there was a variety of colors. Oddly enough, I always felt that these were somewhat unique for every individual piece because look, they ordered this, the enamel from the company, they would mix it for them, send it over to Rolex, and somebody sat there and hand painted these dials. The enamel is fragile, right? Think about an enamel pot, right? Sometimes the enamel cracks off and so on and so forth. And over time, dropping the watch, you know, even servicing the watch. And people switched these dials out because they didn't care for them because there weren't anything special back then. So when we're talking about Stella dials, this is about as rare as you get. And what makes it most rare is the condition of the dial. How do you guys feel about nipples? GMT, gold, nipple dial. Seemingly again, another gold GMT. You've seen these before. Now, condition on this thing is, I can't overstate or understate how great the condition is, whichever word applies. What's that saying? There you go.
Hey.
Uber rare, for the most, you know, very hard to find this example from that era because they didn't make very many of them in such condition, and also a Tiffany dial. But hey, as Nina always said, you coined that phrase, by the way, hashtag rare is what we do. This is what we do around here, and this is an uber rare example, and I don't know if I will see another. You guys know I've been, in fact, it was this watch, and I brought it here. You guys have seen this already. I showed you the previous, I showed you the older Daniel Roth tourbillons, right? This is already the Bulgari era when Bulgari bought them over. Still keep it in line with the original Daniel Roth, but already made by Bulgari, right? Now, why did I show you this watch that I already showed you? Because the last time we talked about it, as I said, the original Daniel Roth is from the 80s, early 90s. They're gone. And the ones that are out there and perhaps available for purchase have gone through a stratosphere. Today, I know a platinum one sold over $250,000, right? So I said that what happens, it goes in the order of oldness. And that is, if you're gonna look at the original ones, what's the next best thing is the next era, and the next era was Bulgari. When I get into something, and I'm sure Adrian's gonna hate me for this, I get into this and I go balls to the wall. So here's another one in platinum. But wait, there's more. And here's one that I'm gonna go very special. Now, how does Instagram feel about explicit material? I just don't want this to get kicked offline. There's a certain genre of watches out there, and it's not just Daniel Roth, but Chopard has done it, AP has done it, Ulysse Nardin, along with other major brands out there, have done a certain genre of watches that's called erotica. And this one's actually a piece unique. If you look at the back of the watch, not a whole lot of erotic about this. You can sort of see the intent in that picture. But wait. Let's see, I'm gonna block this with my finger, but you guys get the idea. So this is one of those genres. This is all hand-painted enamel as well. Piece unique, because you know, anything that's hand-painted in a painting is going to be piece unique. And this is the same version as that, and it's the erotica. And erotica watches, I have quite a few collectors that collect these type of pieces because again, odds are they're extremely rare because most of them are made in a piece unique. Sometimes they make them in a edition of 20, 30, like Ulysse Nardin made the Apple and the Snake watch. This is a painted erotica watch. There are also, a lot of them are mechanical. So not only do you see the act statically, you actually see the acts, like they're mechanical. So, and most of the stuff is in the back, so not to offend anybody, and so on and so forth. Sort of a conversation piece, if this type of thing turns you on, I guess. Anyway, oldie but goodie. Arnold Schwarzenegger has had 28 watches made for him while he was an ambassador from Audemars Piguet. Arnold Schwarzenegger also had a charity, still has, I believe. It's called All Stars, right? And it's designed to take kids from the inner cities and that are not doing well in their life and doing dumb shit, bring them into a place where they can do not dumb shit. He did the All-Star Offshore for them, which is the big 48mm rose gold offshore. Kind of looks like a T3, but not. And he also did a Perpetual calendar chronograph, both in rose gold as well as the white gold. So it is, I don't remember what the limited edition of this one was. They were all limited. This was made, it does say limited edition, but I don't think it says how many. If I'm not mistaken, there were a total of 100 of these made in both metals, total. And I do like the rose gold version a bit better. The white gold was a little bit bland, but this is one of those value watches because this one never took off because it's a Jules Audemars, but around the $50,000 price range, you can pick up a full-blown perpetual calendar chronograph, which is very comparable to a 5970 Patek, a 5270 Patek, etc. And I never understood why these didn't take off. Last but not least, and I'm not gonna go through this because it's just too much at this point, as I always like to do, I like to save the best for last. Patek Philippe, and what you're looking at here is the Grand Complication 5074R with the black dial. Now what this is a full-blown perpetual calendar, and it is also a minute repeater. It is also an automatic featuring the micro rotor, as you can see here. See the micro rotor? Micro rotor. That's what she said on the Daniel Roth erotic watch. But very rarely do I come across these. Number one, application piece. So you have to be approved by Patek to receive this. Number two, those that have bought them, if you can imagine, those that go through the application process, those that are able to afford this watch, because I think original retail on this watch is around, don't quote me, around 600 and change Swiss francs, right? Odds are those people will never resell that watch. So very rarely do these come out on the market. So whenever I get a chance to get a hold of one, I do my best to try out there and get it for a proper price. A watch that still trades around that $750,000 mark. But again, you'd be hard pressed to go out there and find one, because majority of the people that have actually were approved to buy them, which is the weirdest thing ever. Patek is the king of that. They invented this whole, oh, you want to spend $1 million on a watch? No problem. We're gonna have to approve you first. I don't care how much money you have. They've gotten their product line to a level where it's like, hey, we don't like you, we're not selling it to you. Here at Luxury Bazaar, we don't have that process. We sell to everybody. One of the reasons this is one of my favorite is because of its size, right? If you think about the size, it's the size of a 5070 chronograph, right? And most other Grand Complication from Patek from the era, they were a lot smaller. Like the 3939 was 36 millimeters. The 5078 was like 37 or 38 millimeters. It wasn't until the 5207 and 8 came out until they matched the size of this Grand Complication, which is why it was one of the most popular, because again, it came out in that era of bigger and better. But certainly around the era where bigger was better, they finally came out with a Grand Complication that actually sits nice on the wrist size-wise. I think that's it. I mean, I do have more stuff, but we don't have that kind of time. It is Monday. We just came back from the Hampton show. It's been fun, especially the last day. I don't know if you guys followed my story, but we were flooded out, shut down by the fire marshal, and we were packing our stuff in the dark with about 5 inches of water below us. And YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in just the same. Hope you enjoyed today's unboxings. As always, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.